Welcome back to Homesteading with the Zimmermans, where each week we give you another episode of what's happening here on our Northeast Iowa 21-acre homestead. My husband Alvin and I have been married for 25 years and we have 7 children. 5 of those children still live at home. Our oldest 2 are married and no longer live at home, so this means we also have 2 son-in-laws and 1 grandson so far. So on our 21-acre homestead, we seek to preserve the self-sufficient lifestyle of our Old Order Mennonite heritage for the next generation. We involve the children in every aspect of the homestead, from raising and harvesting our own meat, gardening and preserving to fill the family's larder, or preserving the dairy from the family milk cows, plus all the many other skills that develop the character and integrity and relationships of a family that seeks to bring glory and honor to their Heavenly Father. Hello YouTube family, my name is Ruth Zimmerman and this is episode, maybe 5 of eating your way through a quarter or a half beef. So today, I am going to show you how to can your beef. So I'm going to do 2 different versions. I'm going to can some cubed meat, and then I'm going to can some ground beef as well. But first of all, I have said this before, and so I know those of you that have been here know this. I'm careful to only promote things that I personally have used and learned to love. So when a company reaches out to me and wants me to promote their product, it's almost always a no, unless I'm already using their product, which is the case with Rada Cutlery. And I've used Rada Cutlery for my entire adult life because the Mennonites are huge fans of Rada Cutlery, and I received some knives as a wedding gift. So as you can see, these have seen many a days in my kitchen. I probably had these 2 knives for our entire married life, which is like 26 years. So Rada reached out to me and said, hey, we would like to send you some of our cutlery. I said, I already know and love your cutlery. I would be happy to share your cutlery with my audience. So Mitchell's gonna put a QR code. This is not a sponsored ad at all. This is just them saying, can we send you some product and give your followers a discount code. So Mitchell's gonna put a QR code up here for you, and the discount code is Zimmerman10. He'll put that right there for you, and you get to try out your own Rada Cutlery. And I tell you, if your children don't run off with them to the woods, they really do last a long, long time, and they're worth sharpening. One of my favorites is this little paring knife that you can see has a little curved end. I really like that one for peeling apples and things like that. There's something about that little curve that just makes it easier. Okay, so these are round roast, top round roast, or something like that. When you do your cut sheet with your butcher, you can just tell them that you want the drier, tougher cuts cubed for canned meat, right? However, that is going to cost probably a little more, because if they have to cube them, they are, using more of their time. So you'll probably get charged for cubing them. You could just get your round roasts and do what I am doing here. Because if you get your round roast, you have more options. You can, make them into roast beef for sandwiches like we did in last week's video, or you can can them. So if you get them whole, you're gonna have more options. If you can them, you will want to take the fat off the best that you can, because fat is not as shelf stable after it's canned. It can still turn rancid, and it won't hurt you if you have fat on your canned meat. So just because I'm saying you need to take all the fat off before you can it, don't make that Don't let that make you feel as if any fat on top of canned meat is bad. It's just your shelf life will be longer if there's less fat on it. It's not going to hurt you. It's just that if there's fat on it, then it could taste rancid after a while. So we are going to pressure can this. And I know some of you will ask, because I always get these questions, how do you water bath beef? I was raised to believe that you need to pressure can meat because it's low acid. So I have zero experience with water bathing beef of any kind or meat of any kind. But I know the Amish and Mennonites do it. The thing to remember, if you're scared about botulism, is the bacteria spores that are botulism are deactivated when you heat something. So I'm going to, when I'm done canning this, when I open a jar and want to prepare it, then I'm going to heat this. I'm going to heat it to boiling, and it will, any possible botulism spores will be deactivated. Where botulism is a larger concern is like if you can something and if everything lines up, if it was improperly canned and there was botulism on your product and it grew as it was in the jar, the only time I would be concerned is if I was eating something like, let's say, peas that weren't properly canned and botulism grew and we were going to eat them raw right out of the can or on a salad or something like that. But everything that I pressure can is heated before we serve it, so that deactivates it. Here's the other thing that people often don't understand. In healthy people, in most healthy people, your body is going to deactivate those botulism spores before you even know what happened. And that is if everything lined up properly and you do get into contact with the botulism spores. Anyway, I have a whole video on taking the fear out of canning. I will put those up or link those somehow so you can watch those too then. All right, I think I've got enough fat off of these and put this for the chickens, and we are just going to chop this up and put it into jars. So what size you make your meat is completely up to you. I like about 1.5 inch cubes. I like them to be about bite size because when I put them into soups, that's about what I want it to be. Okay, so let's talk about some reasons you want to have canned beef on your shelf. For me, I don't like to start every meal from scratch and make a big production out of it. I need over 50% of our meals to be easy, convenient meals. So for me, that looks like being able to make some soup in 20 minutes or less. And canned meat helps me with that. The other reason is sometimes I need the freezer room. So getting some roasts out of my freezer and canning them gives me a lot of freezer room. So if you're running out of freezer room, canning your beef is a great way to make some freezer room. Also, for me, it's also partially preparedness. It's partially preparedness for me too, because what if we would lose power, and what if all the meat in our freezers would get spoiled? I like the security of knowing that I have some meat that is shelf stable. So that's another reason for me to can some of my meat. And I really would like to have more canned meat on my shelves than I do. But I also know that canned meat is not my family's favorite. So there's that fine balance of keeping enough of canned beef or canned meat on my shelves to make me feel secure. And also knowing that that's not my family's favorite. You can't really get, you know, steaks out of a jar and throw them on the fire like we have been showing up until now. So that was more the special occasion meat that we have been showing in videos up until now. This is more our everyday fare, like the things that sustain us during the week is the canned meat and the cheaper cuts. Okay, now we're just gonna start putting the cubes into jars. I always like to use the wide mouth jars for meat. Number one, because the jars that we can meat in get real greasy, and I can't fit my fist inside a regular mouth jar. So I like to use a wide mouth jar because I can stick my fist in there and get the jars all nice and shiny clean. Okay, you're gonna want to stuff your jars really full because it shrinks together as you can it. So you wanna stuff your jars really full. Don't bring it up past this line, just stuff it down in there. And if you're not a big family like we are, you can easily do this in pints. So I know that we've covered this in some of our previous videos about beef, but what makes some cuts so lean and tough? And what makes some cuts tender and marbled? So the difference is between where the muscle is located on the cow. So your muscles that get a lot of work, like this round roast is part of the hind rump part of the cow, it gets a lot of exercise. So fat doesn't grow on that muscle. And then there's other cuts that are more just like connecting muscles that help hold the body together, and they don't get a lot of exercise. And those cuts of meat are usually much more tender and have fat marbling. You wouldn't want to can the prime rib or the tenderloin. Okay, so 10 pounds of meat will give you 6 to 7 quarts or around 12 pints. So if you tell your butcher you want 10 to 12 pounds of cubed meat, you will get about a canner full of meat. Or if you use 2 roasts that equal about 10 pounds, you will get 6 to 7 quarts or pints. Okay, we are not going to add any water to this beef because it makes its own juice. This is not dry canning. This is something totally different. The beef is going to make its own broth. So we're not adding any water. We are going to add salt and pepper. So I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt to each quart. If you are using pints, you'll just add half a teaspoon. And I use the Redmond's Real Salt, and you'll find their link in the description of this video. And then I like black pepper. I'm gonna put probably a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. So next we are just gonna wipe the rim of every jar to make sure that we didn't get anything stuck on there. And if you forget to wipe your rings, nobody's going to die. The worst that can happen if you forget to wipe your rims is that your jars might not seal if there is something stuck on the ring that causes your jars not to seal. So I am using my 4 jars canning lids. You will find our affiliate link in the description. I have worked with 4 jars for quite a number of years, and I have never had a better seal rate than when I work with 4 jars. And then we're gonna turn them finger tight, which just means you don't like really turn them tight. You just turn them until it goes against. And these are ready to go into the canner. So I put enough water in so that the bottom 1 inch of my jars is setting in water. So then we're just gonna put the lid on, and I'm gonna get this burner started. And the reason I'm doing this outside and not in my kitchen is because this burner is so much faster than my kitchen burner because it has so many more BTUs. And yes, it requires a little more babysitting. And you'll see when I tighten this that I tighten them evenly going across from each other. Now that they're all against, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna make them all very tight. All right, so I'm gonna keep my eye on that and wait for the steam to start coming out. Whew, it's cold. How cold? Well, the actual temperature is probably close to 0. The real feel with the wind is making it feel like 10 below 0. That's Fahrenheit. All right, so while we wait on that canner, we're gonna start browning our meat. And I like to brown my ground beef before I can it, because if I can it raw, it's just a texture issue and it just tastes like boiled meat. And I know we talked about this in a previous video, where with beef you want to brown it for that Maillard reaction, and that is why we love to brown our ground beef before we can it. So we're just going to get this started browning and then we will go from there. Okay, so now that we have captured all the steam that's coming out, we put the 10-pound weight on. Now the steam is going to build up inside. So that's what causes the pressure to rise. And the pressure is coming up really fast. So I'm gonna slow down my burner. And if you're doing this on your kitchen stove, it's not gonna be this reactive. So I'm going to actually turn off my inside burner. I have 2 burners on this out here. And I'm gonna bring that slowly up to 10 pounds of pressure. And then when we are at 10 pounds of pressure, I am going to set my timer for 90 minutes. And we're gonna keep it at 10 pounds of pressure for 90 minutes. And I know that it looks like a lot of steam is escaping, but it's mostly just the temperature difference. If it weren't 0 degrees out here, you wouldn't see that steam right there. It's just natural escape from the vent. So we are getting close to 10 pounds of pressure. I'm just gonna keep my eye on that and then set my timer. So I'm taking this to the chickens and I'm thinking I might get some questions. I think we all like to think of chickens as herbivores, but they are really omnivores. And since my chickens are all cooped up because it's winter, I like to give them every bit of scraps that I can. Here, chickie. Okay, our ground beef is browning nicely. You could turn this into taco meat by adding taco seasoning, the same way you would, the same amount that you would for a pound of ground beef or 2 pounds of ground beef, whatever your usual method is. I already have some canned taco meat, so I am not going to turn this into taco meat. You could also turn this into sloppy joe. I have a video on barbecue hamburger or sloppy joe, and I'm going to add that one to the playlist so that if you want to turn this into sloppy joe or barbecue hamburger, you can do that as well. You can go any way from here. Oh, I want pepper too. Can't forget the black pepper. Having canned taco meat on my shelf is very, very helpful. It's one of my favorite convenient meals because we make beef quesadillas just like that. Like it literally takes like 10 minutes to make some beef quesadillas. And then the barbecue hamburger, that's very easy as well. We just put it on, heat it up and put it on hamburger buns. But with salt and pepper, this will just be plain ground beef. And anytime a recipe asks for browned ground beef, all I do is open up a pint of this. There's about 1 pound to a pint is about the same. And I also use this when I make our cheesy potato soup. I'll add a pint or a pound of ground beef. Okay, my liquid is almost all dissipated, so I'm just gonna let this brown a little bit while I wash my pint jars. Okay friends, we are ready to start canning the ground beef, and I am just gonna spoon it into my pint jars. And I am not using a slotted spoon because we do want the liquid in this jar. Because this meat is already cooked, this means it has already released its liquid, so we are going to make sure there's liquid in these jars. And you want to settle the meat in there. That works, I guess. See how much space I gained in there? So yeah, you want to smash it all down in there. You want about 1 inch headspace in these jars. So instead of just adding water to those pint jars, I am going to scrape all the yummy bits of broth from my cast iron. And we are going to use this to fill our jars with liquid. It doesn't take a lot. And you want to maintain that 1 inch of headspace, even with your liquid. So this meat, because it's already cooked, will not shrink as it cans, like the raw meat would. Most important thing is to wipe the grease off the rims, because too much grease can prevent your lid from sealing. So I always like to use a dry paper towel or napkin to wipe the grease. And then the lids. Same as I did with the quart jars, and I'm going to put enough water in so that the bottom 1 inch of the pint jars is covered with water. Got a steam show going on out here. Okay, both canners are done. The quarts I did for 90 minutes, the pints for 70 minutes, and they're gonna cool off really fast out here. But if they cool off too fast, you run the risk of them boiling over because the temperature difference makes them boil over. So they're already, oh, that one's still hot. So I'm just gonna let them for a couple more minutes before I take them inside because I do not want my jars to freeze, and that will happen when it's 0 degrees out here. So I gotta keep my eye on them. Okay, it is time for us to make supper, and we are going to make one of our convenience meals since we have church tonight. So it's kind of a quick supper, and these two, Harrison and Kendrick, are in charge. Harrison, what are you making? What's your job?
The mashed potatoes.
Harrison's making mashed potatoes. Kendrick, what are you making?
The meat and the gravy.
Kendrick is going to use a quart of our canned beef, and he's going to make beef and gravy out of this.
I got hot water in here with the leftovers that were left in the jar, and this is gonna help us make the gravy for meat. I'm cutting the potatoes so they're all the same size and they get ready at the same time. Should I put it all the way full?
That's enough. Yep.
Corner, this one?
You're gonna add another one. So Kendrick is going to make the gravy. He's gonna start with 1/4 a cup of flour.
Cold water.
Yep, now you need 1/2 a cup of cold water. Okay, I think you have, we had more broth than we thought, so I think you need to make another recipe of gravy, okay? You can just let that.
Mom, look. I made gravy.
You can turn your burner now down to real low. Even further.
Harrison.
What is he doing?
Well, guys, thank you for being here for this week. And we have turned 16 pounds of beef from the freezer into a shelf-stable option for the family. So I hope that you have been inspired to can some of your meat and get some shelf-stable and convenient foods onto your shelf.